Before we even start talking about the strategies of doing business in China, it's important that you understand the business context and why China is different and complex. First of all, China has lots of restrictions and unspoken rules that you, as a foreigner, can't fully be aware of. However, Chinese people still manage to do business, often by finding ways to go around some of these restrictions. So it's important to observe and sometimes rely on their expertise in this matter. It's a fact that many foreign companies, no matter big or small, have failed at some point in China. I once attended a conference organized by the French Chamber of Commerce in China, and there was a short presentation by the local director of Peugeot, the French car company. He explained that for the first 5 years, Peugeot had been losing money in China because they had not been able to adapt their offer to the needs of the local market. They had just assumed that Chinese people would be happy to buy the same cars as European customers, but that assumption turned out to be totally wrong. The situation in China is complex, mainly because of the heterogeneous nature of the population. There are huge differences between people belonging to different ethnic groups, different generations, with different educational background and different levels of income. China is also in the middle of a transition period that started 30 years ago. At that time, the country started to open itself to the world, and this generated a lot of changes internally. The migration of people from countryside to cities. Before 1980, only 20% of the population was urban, and today that number has reached 52%. A second change is the wide access to technology. Today, 70% of the population in China has a cell phone. And the third change is the creation of a very rich class. China has now more millionaires than any other country in the world except the US. The transition continues today, and is a transition from manufacturing to services. Now the most successful companies are into e-commerce and social media. From exporting to importing, and from China being the second to becoming the first economic power in the world. You'll find an article from the Financial Times related to that in the supplementary materials. China is also no longer just copying, it's now innovating, and the spendings on research and development have increased by 20% per year since 1989. The sectors that are currently in development are automobile. China is the first car market with 127 million cars, which is still less than 10% of the population. E-commerce. Spendings have increased by 70% per year since 2009 on websites such as Alibaba and JD. Social media. There are now 536 million users of Sina Weibo, which is the equivalent of Twitter. Clean energy. China has the highest investment in clean energy in the world, which is $54 billion in 2013. And finally, tourism. China is now in the first place in terms of amount of money spent on tourism abroad. So these were just a few insights on the current business context in China. And now we'll get into more details as we talk about the keys to do successful business in China.